One of the greatest and worst non-customers ever was a guy from New York who was an aerospace engineer. And I know that because he proclaimed that to me multiple times over the course of our negotiations. I was a failed engineer, so I have some respect for them, but I think they can tend to be, if we're stereotyping, some of the absolute worst buyers ever, because they're very good at what they do, but they assume that that translates to anything mechanical. So they will just proclaim to me that they know more than I do because they're an engineer. And I'm like, that's wonderful. Have you ever changed oil on a car? Nope, but I'm an engineer. So this guy was inquiring about a 2007 GT3 that I had. It was a really, really nice car, other than just a little bit of road rash on the front end, standard fare for any car that's been driven more than once. And he comes to see the car. He was coming from out of town, and he was coming on a Wednesday. And I had a hard appointment that I had to leave at 6 p.m. for. It was a rehearsal for a gig. I told him in advance, I said, I'm out of here at 6. I have a prior engagement. I can't break my word. This is something I need to be there for. This is a commitment. He said, okay, well, I'll be there at 4:30. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you have this amount of time. Because I got the idea from him that he was going to require some hand-holding. So he comes and looks at it and was picking the car apart, very, very particular, even though there's really not much to pick apart. The irony was that he was on the larger side, very, very generously proportioned, but he was complaining about the bolster wear on the car. And he kept getting in and out of the GT3. And I'm like, man, you're going to do more damage in this test drive experience than this car's ever had. So he wants to test drive it. And I'm like, yep, that's fine, but it's going to be quick because we're at like 5:15 now. So we go for a test drive, comes back. He wants to look over it more. I mean, he wants to go over every inch of this car because I'm an aerospace engineer. I'm like, cool story. So we come up to like 5:45 and I'm like, I got to go. I have a commitment. And he just kind of looked at me, and I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was something like, well, I'm a customer. And just like had this standoff with me of essentially saying, are you going to force me out of your showroom? Me being extra medium, I knew that I physically couldn't, but it was one of those situations where I lost some self-respect for myself. I think most of my regrets in life are things I've not done, like not punch that guy out at the bar that was talking badly to somebody, or whatever. It's not things I've done or said, it's things I've not said that I wish I had been more bold. And this is one of those times where I wish I just would have said, I don't break my word, get out of my showroom. I told you 6 p.m. But I didn't, and he went over the car for another hour or so, and I just stood there and I had to text people and say, I can't leave, sorry, I gotta skip rehearsal. I'll show up for the gig. But, I'm such an amazing drummer. Practice? Who needs practice? You talking practice? He went back to New York. He left a deposit. We have contracts, but I'm fairly easy to deal with, right? I operate based on my word and expect people to do the same. So we have a policy with deposits. It's a 5-day hold, and that allows you to do pre-purchase inspections, line-up financing, whatever. But it's usually not explicitly stated where both people sign it. But in this case, I'm like, I'm going to handwrite this on the contract because I just have a feeling about this guy. And I made him sign that 5-day hold. Sure enough, comes Monday and I say, hey, how's the financing going? Oh, yeah, it's fine. But, I won't have the check till Friday or whatever because, I was at a funeral. I have to go to a funeral for my mom or employee or something like that. And I was like, well, your deposit expires Wednesday. He's like, are you really going to pull a deal on me because I'm at a funeral? I'm at a funeral. Somebody died. How insensitive of you. And I'm like, no, man, you're the one that's playing the funeral card to take advantage of me. So I'm just standing by what we agreed to. You're actually the one that's stomping on their grave by trying to leverage it to get more time. So then we get into the PPI. And he calls the shop and he goes, well, give me your 3 levels of PPI. And they said, well, there's no 3 levels. An inspection is an inspection. Like if you want a leak down and compression as well, that's not included. But like a PPI is a PPI. And he kept asking him for the 3 levels of PPI. I'm an aerospace engineer. I need 3 different options. Okay, bro. Then he wanted a clutch inspection. Well, on a Metzger engine GT3, to even look at the clutch, you have to lower the engine slightly and drop the transmission. So it's basically the same labor as replacing a clutch. So they said, sure, if you'd like to pay $1,500 for us to inspect the clutch plate on a 10,000 mile car, you can do that. But these are 50,000 mile clutches typically, and it feels fine. He kept harping on the clutch inspection because I'm an aerospace engineer. I want to make sure everything's perfect. Okay. And then he came back to me because I said, I know the previous owner, it's been on track like 5 times, not been abused, it's been maintained, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked me a question that I've never been asked before. And he goes, how do you know it's had 5 track days? Do you get a notarized statement from the previous owner attesting to that? And I just started laughing and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, well, how do you know they're telling you the truth? I'm like, man, a notarized statement doesn't mean jack squat. And no, I don't. He's like, oh, no, that means it's factual. And I'm like, listen, you might be an aerospace engineer, but guess what? I'm a notary. So I know what notarization means and what it doesn't mean. All it means is basically one of 2 things, depending on which thing you ask the customer when you're notarizing. One is this your signature? Are you signing it of your free will? Yes. The other is everything stated within this statement true? They can say yes. That doesn't mean it's true. If they're going to lie, they're going to lie in front of a notary. I'm not a judge or something. This isn't court. I can't get them for perjury. He's just pushing every single boundary. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. So then he comes back to me and starts asking about the condition again. And he's asking me about the rock chips on the front. He's asking me all this different stuff. And he's trying to essentially trip me up. And then he accuses me of lying because I didn't tell him about something. And I'm like, you were at my shop for 3 hours looking this car over with a fine-tooth comb. There are no surprises here. I'm telling you exactly what I told you before and exactly what you saw with your own eyes. You're trying to put words in my mouth that I didn't say so that you can call me a liar. And he was just abusive the whole time. The caveat to the deal, and this is why we couldn't finish it within 5 days, is he wanted to come back and see it and test drive it again. So he had spent 3 hours with the car, had a PPI done, and he wanted to come see it again. But we were still within the timeline of the deposit, right? I'm like, I'm not going to violate the terms of the contract, regardless of how much I dislike this guy. He has until X day to complete the deal. So I said, you know what? There's this movie called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, where the girl is just so awful that she makes the guy want to run away. So she doesn't break up with him. And I'm like, I'm going to play that card. So I just started being what he was essentially accusing me of being. And I was impatient and difficult and just everything that he didn't like. And so finally, he texted me and said, I don't think this deal is right for me. Feel free to refund my deposit. I'm like, yes, I win. So I did. And then he was like super pleasant, like, hey, I know this car wasn't right, but keep me in mind if you find another one. And I'm like, absolutely freaking not. I hope I never hear from you again, and you will definitely never voluntarily hear from me again. I thought that was the end of him, and it was for that deal. But a few years later, after I had grown and gotten a staff, one of the sales guys messaged me. I was traveling and said, hey, this guy inquired on such and such GT3 and he wants to talk to you. And they sent me his name and phone number. And I'm like, nope. I'm like, don't give that guy any time. Don't call him back. If you do call him back, tell him it's sold or something, like whatever. I'm like, don't let that guy in the shop. Like, he will just waste your time, abuse you, and the whole time brag about being an aerospace engineer.
I start most of my days browsing Auto Tempest for my next bad decision of a car, but did you know that supporting Auto Tempest can also help support all the great content that they support in the automotive YouTube world? I know that you've probably enjoyed a lot of videos that they supported and a lot of channels that they've been sponsoring for years, perhaps without even knowing it. So check them out now at the link in the description below. It is the most powerful way to shop for your next car because you'll see all the listings showing up in one search, and you can search by any criteria that you want, but it also helps make automotive YouTube a much better place. So check them out now, autotempest.com, all the cars, one search.